Well, hi there, people. It's been a little while since I've been on here. Just want to thank a couple of people who sent me some messages of encouragement. I really appreciate them. And I also want to say thank you to those who come to this channel to hear what's being said. It is quite humbling, and we appreciate you. So what has God been showing me about the ministry of the 144,000? There was something that I didn't quite have right about the 144,000, and it is going to help us understand the ministry that they have. And I just got revelation over the last day or two. I know that they are the bride. And many other people also understand this. And when you see the dimensions of New Jerusalem, which is called the bride, and you see that the 12 sides of 12,000 furlongs all add up to 144,000, you know that the bride and the 144,000 are the same group. So I also know that there are two different groups that make up New Jerusalem. And there in Revelation chapter 7, it speaks of the two groups. The group that could be numbered, which is the 144,000, and the group that could not be numbered, which is called the Great Multitude. Now, the 144,000 is sealed. Now, when we search into this seal, we discover that it speaks of their holiness. So it says here in Revelations 14, "Then I looked, and behold, a lamb standing on Mount Zion, and with him 144,000, having his Father's name written on their foreheads." So that's the seal of God. "And I heard a voice from heaven, like the voice of many waters, and like the voice of loud thunder. And I heard the sound of harpists playing their harps. They sang as it were a new song before the throne, before the four living creatures and the elders, and no one could learn that song except the 144,000 who were redeemed from the earth." They're redeemed, and they're from the earth. They're not still among the earth. "These are the ones who were not defiled with women, for they are virgins. These are the ones who follow the Lamb wherever he goes. These were redeemed from among men, being first fruits to God and to the Lamb. And in their mouth was found no deceit, no deception. And so only truth is found in their mouth. And they are without fault. They are found in holiness before the throne of God," right? So they have their Father's name on their forehead. They are redeemed from among men, which means from among mankind. It's not just men. They are first fruits. That's important as we go into this. As I said, there is only truth found in their mouth, no deceit. And they are found without fault before the throne. So that's holiness. Now, I don't want to spend too much time on this because I want to try and keep this message as short as I can. You don't get the seal and then God makes you holy. In other words, you don't get the calling and then that automatically makes you holy. The seal is given as a reward to those who seek holiness. Remember, Jesus told the 7 churches in Asia Minor that they must overcome their sins if they want to be rewarded with entry into the New Jerusalem. Nothing defiled will enter New Jerusalem. Then we have this second group in Revelation chapter 7, identified as the Great Multitude. But what reveals something important to us about them is that they hold palm branches. Now, once again, I can't spend too much time on this as it's a full teaching in itself. But it speaks of the Feast of Tabernacles. This is the lulav that the Jews wave on Sukkot. And Sukkot is the Feast of Tabernacles, also known as the Feast of Ingathering. Sukkot celebrates the gathering of the harvest. So the 144,000 is called the first fruits. They're the first fruits of the harvest, or they're also the barley harvest. And the second group is the wheat harvest. Now, the first fruits are called the barley harvest because barley matures first. It matures first and it is harvested first. It is sometimes later in the season, in the autumn season, when the wheat matures and is ready for harvest. And you can read all about that in the Jewish autumn feast. So can we understand from this that the difference between the two groups in Revelation chapter 7, of course, there's way more evidence on this, but time's a priority here. So when we go to Revelation chapter 14 and look at that, we see three groups. We see the 144,000 are already standing on Mount Zion, which is the New Jerusalem, and they're standing with the Lamb. They've already been harvested. We know this because it speaks of Jesus as being the Lamb. The Lamb was slain. Jesus stands among them to identify with them as martyrs. So these are the first fruits, as it tells us this in verse 4. We then see two more groups. One that will be harvested by the one who is like the Son of Man. These to be harvested belong to Jesus. It says that they are the harvest of the earth, or it says the harvest of the earth is ripe. To say that the harvest of the earth is ripe means the harvest of the entire earth is ripe. So it gives us the timing. This is the end of the age, and this is the wheat harvest. So that's verses 14 through to 16. So the second group to be harvested are the grapes of wrath that will be gathered and thrown into the winepress of God's wrath. These are the tares, because that's what you do with the weeds. You throw them into the fire. It says her grapes are fully ripe. And what that says is that evil has matured as well. Evil has reached its pinnacle in the world as well. Okay, so what happens between the verses explaining that the 144,000 who are the first fruits, who are standing on Mount Zion with the Lamb, and the harvesting of the wheat and the tares? We have 8 verses describing the proclamation of the 3 angels. Now, first thing, angels don't preach the gospel. As I've said this before, they can't because they are not redeemed creatures. Only the redeemed can preach the gospel of redemption. That's why the 144,000 are going to be the ones who deliver the final message to the world, because they are fully redeemed individuals. Only the redeemed can bear the evidence of God's redemptive power in their life. Now, angel is also another word for messenger, and it's also the prophet's job to bring warning. So it's the 144,000's job to deliver the proclamation of the 3 angels, and in doing so, whoever accepts their message will go into the wheat harvest, and whoever rejects their message will go into the winepress of God's wrath. Now, I knew all this before and have done another video on it, but I just have some new understanding because I thought that the 144,000 were the bride, and the great multitude was just simply another group, maybe a lesser group. But I now understand that both groups are the bride, and the 144,000 are just the first fruits of the resurrection of the bride. But here's what knowing that then tells us. The 144,000 are to be prophets like John the Baptist. They'll come from their time in the wilderness. They will have the spirit of Elijah upon them to turn the hearts of the fathers back to the children, and the hearts of the children back to the fathers. They are to prepare a people for the coming of the Lord. So the 144, that's what the spirit of Elijah is, to turn the hearts of the fathers back to the children, hearts of the children back to the fathers, so blah, blah. So the 144,000 are the bride that will mature first. They're the barley. And then help the great multitude, the wheat, to mature into the bride ready for harvest. Okay, so maybe we all knew that already, but here is what we see, or here is how we can see it playing out in the future. This is what God has been speaking to me about for the last 8 weeks. There is a huge warfare developing between the generations, the baby boomers and the millennials especially. The baby boomers have been calling the millennials insulting and demeaning names, and the millennials are doing the same thing back. And this is happening even among Christians. Now, the baby boomers have been calling the millennials entitled, lazy, snowflakes. They call them hypocrites and accuse them of silly things like buying smashed avo on toast instead of saving for a house. Millennials are doing the same thing. They're calling the baby boomers hypocrites and have started the OK Boomer meme and are holding the baby boomers responsible for everything that they don't like about their world. But conversely, the millennials are not thanking them for the benefits that they have received either, as we all should do. We all should be grateful to the generations that have gone before us and paved the way. The boomers paved a huge way. You have no idea what we did. The changes that we brought in feminism and we broke the ceiling, and there's a lot that boomers did that millennials are refusing to accept. And it goes back the other way. The boomers are not understanding the world that the millennials have had to grow up in. So the millennials are looking at everything that the boomers have at the end of their life, not looking at what they didn't have at the beginning of life, and they're resenting it. And the baby boomers are doing the same thing. They're looking at everything that the millennials are starting out life with, knowing that they didn't start out there, and they are resenting it. And it goes on and on and on, each pointing the finger at the other and accusing them for all the evil that's in the world. Now, there's one thing that all Christians should know, and that is that we all add our own sin to this world. Jesus died for all our sins. There is no one person or no one group that stands out as more evil than another. But here's the thing, right? Here's the thing. This is what I want to talk to you about. A lot of the 144,000 is going to be made up of baby boomers. Now, amongst them, there'll be some Gen X, Y, and Z, but the vast majority of the great multitude is going to be made up of the millennials. And it's going to be the job of the 144,000 to turn the hearts of the fathers to the children and the hearts of the children to the fathers in order to prepare a people for the return of the Lord. Now, the enemy is doing everything he can by driving as big a wedge as he possibly can between the generations in an unprecedented manner. I mean, there's always been, some intergenerational rivalry and blaming and all that, but this is unprecedented. And this is where the bad side of the internet comes in, unfortunately. Now, I know it's been a long time since I did my last video, but this message actually follows on after the last one. In that video, I explained that if we don't have our own primary relationship sorted out, because God places us in families to sanctify us. families, it is the primary way in which God redeems us, is through our relationships that we have with other people. Now, if we don't sort those out, we will not be chosen to serve in the 144,000. If you are still engaged in your own battles, you won't be mature enough to help others. The gospel is a message of reconciliation. And if you don't know what that means, if you don't know the process for that, you're not going to be in a position where you'll cause more problems than you will help. So God is calling the 144,000 to something higher. We don't get away with any of that. He's calling us to holiness. That is the road to holiness. And guess what? Something else that I have to tell you that God has been talking to me about this last couple of months, and this also has to include our relationship with the institutional church. Now, I'm not saying that you have to go back to church if you're not involved with one. I'm not saying that, but we must be in a right relationship with them, despite what they are capable of. We must get rid of the us-them mentality, because the church will be part of the ministry of the 144,000. And justice is not justice unless we understand mercy as well. We must be healed. We will not be able to cry out for justice for others if we're still engaged in seeking justice for ourselves. Now, this video has gone a little bit longer than I wanted to, and I need to stop there, but I will continue this message very soon. Bless you, and it's good to be back.